Hello, this is Justin Williams with the Wolfpacker Podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by Matt Carter, and we're going to talk about the NC State 72-67 victory over Wake Forest Wednesday night. I'm sure the viewers on our YouTube channel are probably wondering what's going on with my facial hair. We will get to that, I promise you. But first, this podcast is brought to you in part by JFQ Lending. With interest rates below 3%, there has never been a better time to lock in a low fixed interest rate on your mortgage. You'll never need to think about refinancing again. Set it and forget it. And with JFQ Lending, you are guaranteed to get the highest level of customer service. They have an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau and over 3,000 5-star reviews. Give Hunter Clausen a call today at 480-513-3992 or email Hunter directly at hclausen@jfqlending.com. That's HCLAUSSEN at jfqlending.com. JFQ Lending, Inc., Equal Access Lender, licensed in over 40 states, www.jfqlending.com. And while you're at it, head over to thewolfpacker.com and use promo code PACK60. That's promo code PACK60 for a free 60-day trial on all of our premium content, news, and analysis over at thewolfpacker.com. Obviously, there's plenty of off-season football topics to discuss, plus we're in the thick of conference play in men's and women's basketball, so be sure to take advantage of that promo code because there's plenty of great premium content to check out on thewolfpacker.com. And before we get into our game breakdown and I explain the facial hair, remember to subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. We're on Apple Podcast app, Spotify, Google Play, and of course, you can watch us on YouTube as well, and remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Wolfpacker YouTube channel. Okay, Matt, I will start off the breakdown of this game with an explanation of the facial hair, which brings us to probably the biggest topic of discussion, at least on social media and for Wolfpack fans following the 5-point win over the Demon Deacons. It was a great opportunity to end the 4-game losing streak NC State was suffering in the month of January. But this goatee is in honor of Devon Daniels, who we hope is doing okay right now. He went down with about 9 minutes left in the second half with an apparent left leg injury. Looked scary. He had to be helped off the court. He immediately went back to the locker room, and I saw him moments later walking through the back alley of PNC Arena on crutches. But up until that point, he was having a great game. He led the pack with 20 points Wednesday night, had 9 rebounds, had a few assists as well, had some turnover problems, but all in all was having a great game. And you hate to see him go down with that type of injury to kind of sour what should have been a sweet night for the Wolfpack to get back in the win column. But I typically wouldn't go with the goatee look, but I figured, maybe it could put a smile on the face of some Wolfpack fans, and as a tribute to Devon Daniels, who, regardless of his play any given night, he's going to give it his all. Just a tough guy, and you hope that this isn't anything serious. Hopefully he can get back on the court soon enough. But Matt, I guess that's a good place to start. Obviously, a good win for NC State to, if anything else, just end the losing streak. It's not necessarily the most quality opponent. Wake Forest trends towards the bottom of the ACC, although they might not be as bad as we may have predicted in the preseason. But nonetheless, NC State gets back in the win column, but you can't avoid the elephant in the room that Devon Daniels' status moving forward is certainly in question with what could be a serious injury, could be something minor and just something that really hurt in the moment, but we will wait to hear that information. But just your thoughts on the game in general and kind of how much you weigh in the Devon Daniels injury, from your takeaway from last night.
Yeah, let's get something straight here. Start off the podcast. That's not facial hair, my friend. That's. If I squint, I can kind of see your.
All right. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not a mountain man like you, Matt.
That's what I'm saying.
You've got at least 20 years on me, first of all, and secondly, I'm not as. It's not as good as Devon's. It's never going to be as good as. Well, never say never, but it's not going to be as good as Devon's, at least in 2021. But it's a tribute. I'm doing my best, Matt.
Well, your girlfriend would never let you be as good as Devon Daniels, right?
I sent my girlfriend a Snapchat of this about 30 minutes before we started recording. You know, she didn't give approval. She is not happy about it. So at first I was thinking I'd leave it until Devon Daniels returns to the court, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to get away with that and be able to keep my girlfriend. So
you have to prioritize on that decision. I'll leave that up to you. But, you know, I could do this in a week. I could shave off my beard and it would be back like 3 days later. But to the bigger discussion, it wasn't the prettiest game, only because I didn't think it was as ugly as most people thought. I heard from a lot of people that the morning after the game and during the game, this is ugly, this is terrible. I've only seen Wake Forest play one other time. That was against UNC, and that was a similarly very unpleasant game to watch. So there may be an element of that's how Wake Forest plays you. And I don't deny, look, 39 turnovers combined is ugly. And that was probably, for me, the one aspect that was most disappointing because I felt like NC State got turnovers by its defense. I felt Wake Forest got turnovers by NC State's sloppiness on offense. I felt like there was a lot of sloppy little mistakes by NC State on offense that resulted in a lot of their 19 turnovers. And quite frankly, that and the Devon Daniels injury probably made a game that would have been a comfortable margin. I never sweated out that NC State was going to lose the lead. I just felt like even when Wake made a run, they were still needing 2 threes to tie the game. That was a lot. It was going to come down to could NC State make free throws. And they didn't even have to make all of them, just enough. And so I never really felt like NC State was threatened, but the inability to put Wake away, I think it attributed A to the turnovers and B to Devon Daniels' injury. Because Devon Daniels was the one guy who was kind of offensively on his game for NC State. Hellums had a pretty decent game too, and he's going to have to step up and be more aggressive going forward. But then you had some flashes. Shaquille Moore made a couple threes, but really the only guy that was really on his game offensively, shooting the basketball, was Devon Daniels, who originally had a double-double. I guess they readjusted the statistics and gave him 9 rebounds instead of 10.
There were quite a few stat adjustments. Like NC State finished with 21 turnovers last night. This morning I'm looking at it that has 20 on stat broadcast, so who knows? Yeah,
and actually I'm looking at it now. It was 37 turnovers, not 39, because NC State had 2 less turnovers instead of 17. So, But you could tell the offense got a little stagnant without Daniels in the game. He was the security blanket, and they missed him. And, we'll have to wait and see. There have been plenty of times. Grant Gibson in the bowl game, I was convinced he tore his ACL. When you remember after the touchdown, he jumped up, landed awkwardly, and then the next couple of days later, tweeted out, no serious damage, should be okay for the spring. So
right.
You never know. It didn't look pretty live. It's not good that he kind of grabbed it. Not really grabbed it, but you could tell that in midair he was keeping that leg off the ground, that he could feel something was wrong with it. And, so it's all about holding your collective breath until I'm sure NC State will tweet out some kind of news about it, probably Friday, I would guess.
Well, speaking of football comparisons to the Devon Daniels injury real quick, I saw an interesting tweet last night that I thought was worth bringing up. But, if you're NC State, maybe you check down the rosters of all of your athletic programs and make sure that anybody named Devon is wrapped up in bubble wrap. Because, you look at Devin Leary, he had the season-ending injury against Duke with the broken leg. Now, you don't know if Devon Daniels' injury is that serious yet. We don't know. We're just, speculating at this point. Who knows? But it was a scary injury. Devon Daniels, Devin Leary. Did Devon Boykin suffer an injury this year too? No, okay.
No.
Well, nonetheless, 2 Devons, very important to both programs. So NC State, take care of your Devons moving forward. But yeah, I'm with you on I didn't find it was an ugly game in general from both teams. NC State was sloppy with the ball on offense. Wake Forest they're just a young team. I mean, Carter Witt, he's going to be a talented player in the ACC. He finished with 4 turnovers, no points last night, and I think a dozen or so minutes on the floor. But there was a lot of misses from 2 that you'd expect to go in. There was like 5 official reviews, which really made the game longer than it needed to be. It was just an ugly general feel to the game, but I didn't think NC State played poorly. I thought they played actually their best defensive performance I can remember since maybe the Miami game in 2021. That's something that we had talked about after these last 2 losses, that NC State has played well enough on offense to win these last 2 games against Florida State and Carolina. The only problem is they were allowing both of those opponents to an average of 95.5 points per game. You're not going to win games if you can't make defensive stops, and that's exactly what they did to Wake Forest, a team that came into this game shooting at a high clip from 3. They are the leading team in the ACC in terms of 3-point shooting percentage compared to their overall field goal attempts. They take more threes proportionately than any other team in the ACC. They still took a lot of threes last night, but NC State was able to continue to try to force them off the perimeter and give them, contested shots from beyond the arc. Wake Forest finishes the game, I think, shooting 33% from 3, and that was 33%. They went 8 of 24 from beyond the arc, and that was inflated based on the last 3 3-pointers that Davian Williamson made in the last 2 minutes, where, I mean, all of them were just completely contested. You just got to tip your hat to Williamson for making those tough shots. But, I mean, at one point, Wake was shooting around 20% from 3, and that's not a winning equation for this Demon Deacons team. But defensively, it's encouraging to see what NC State did last night. They forced 20 turnovers. They grabbed 10 steals. They got 8 blocks. They did what they do best on the defensive end. They're not going to be a team that, if they're not forcing turnovers, if they're not being aggressive on defense, it's not like they're going to hold opponents on average to a low field goal shooting percentage. But when they are able to have event creation on the defensive end, that's when the NC State team is able to perform its best. Offensively, the 3-point shots were going in. They shot 50% from beyond the arc, 7 of 14 on the night. The 2-point efficiency wasn't as great. They actually shot better from 3. They shot just 45.7% on 2-pointers, 50% from 3. So kind of an odd dilemma there. But, NC State was able to get a third of its points off of turnovers in fast break transition opportunities. That's something that that's his goal going into every game. He said in the past that he wants to score a third of his points off of turnovers, and he did exactly that last night against the Demon Deacons team that has struggled with turnovers this season. So it was good to see NC State, I feel, get back to its identity in that sense. That's something that we had talked about on the last podcast, Matt, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on. You questioned what the identity of this NC State team was. They'd stopped pressing in the month of January as much as they had been. Coach Keats talked after the game that he hadn't been pressing as much because they haven't been able to practice it as much. They haven't had the bodies available in games and or practices with the COVID breaks and injuries to Manny Bates and Braxton Beverly. But they got back to that last night. They started pressing from the get-go, forced 2 turnovers on the first 2 defensive possessions. Wake Forest wasn't even able to get past half court on those first 2 possessions. So I think we know that this is NC State's identity. I think it was just refreshing to see them go back to that. Would you agree with that sentiment, Matt?
Well, it surprised me greatly because, to be truth be told, he doesn't play much in ACC play, period. He had kind of the MO the first, what year are we on now? Year 4 of Kevin Keats, when they would pile up the turnovers against non-ACC teams in the press, but typically where the turnovers in ACC play came was more off of deflections, help defense, which I thought was excellent last night. There was a lot of anticipatory steals in which the defense rotated. But what I mean is that, they were pressing on the ball. The dribbler gets past the initial defender. The help defender comes up. And what you saw was that guy coming down to get to the defender that would be the offensive player who the help defender left. And so you saw a lot of anticipatory steals last night, which I thought was good. I think NC State finished with 10 steals. 10 steals, I believe, in the game.
Yep.
And so that's typically where most of their turnovers, and they're better at that than most ACC teams. And so they always typically do better with the turnovers. The difference is in non-conference play, they also get turnovers out of the press, and then in ACC play, they tend to back off the press. So I was glad to see it last night. Now, the caveat here is, we said Wake looks better than we thought, but that's a low bar, right? I mean, I think we all anticipated a very long year for Wake Forest.
I mean, I didn't think Wake Forest was going to win an ACC game this year with who they had.
Yeah, I mean, that team is built on transfers from mid-majors who have come in, a few holdovers from Danny Manning that were, they're ways away from being high-quality ACC players, and some young guys, in the case of Carter Witt, who should still be a senior in high school right now, who literally arrived a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was an easier team to defend, as you and I talked about off air. I thought Wake Forest was an easier team to defend. But to be fair, there's an element of maybe the last two games where they did give up a whopper amount of field goal percentage, or just bad matchups as well. It could have been a combination of a variety of things. But to your point, yes, it was good to see them get the press. It looked like it was kind of a 2-1-2. I think it's what Kevin Keith said after the game. You could see it. And
yep.
Clearly, Wake didn't see it coming. And I saw some quotes after the game from Steve Forbes, new Wake Forest head coach, where he said he was angry. He said the good thing you couldn't see underneath his mask. He was quite angry. And he quite frankly was pretty dismissive of the press. He said it shouldn't have been that hard to break. So I'm guessing Wake didn't practice a lot for it. They weren't quite that prepared for it. And it was good to break out. And that's something you can look. You got guys, Cam Hayes, Shaquille Moore, Thomas Allen. They are good on the ball defenders. Devon Daniels is a good on the ball defender. Darian Sebron could be if he's got to play more minutes. So you got guys who can defend the ball. So why not break it out more in ACC play? At a bare minimum, by the time they got it across half court, they've lost about a third of the shot clock to get going in the offense.
Well, you can certainly take advantage of the press when you're playing a team that has an inexperienced backcourt like Wake Forest does, and a team that creates a lot of turnovers on the offensive end, like the Demon Deacons have this year. I think they entered this game with the highest turnover percentage among ACC teams in conference play so far. But I do want to touch on your point about the help defense. That's where I thought I saw the most outstanding improvement from what we've seen over the past 2 or 3 games during NC State's January losing streak. Particularly DJ Thunderberg. I thought he had his best defensive game of the season this year. He had 2 blocks, 1 steal, and at times early in the first half he struggled with rotations and switches on the defensive end, but he kind of got it together, particularly when Manny Bates had to come out of the game early with 2 quick fouls in the first half. DJ Thunderberg had to play a bulk of those minutes at the center position, and I thought he did, all in all, pretty well on the defensive end. So you like to see that improvement from DJ Thunderberg, a guy that has struggled on the defensive end over these past few games. But I do want to talk about the front court, because I think if you want to get nitpicky and talk about maybe one thing that needs to improve after this game. I saw this matchup as very advantageous for NC State's front court. Wake Forest is not a big team. Their tallest regular rotational player was 6'9". Wake Forest bigs had not been producing tremendous numbers entering this contest, and yet they were, all in all, able to have pretty good games. Oguama, excuse me for butchering that pronunciation. He had 11 points, 4 rebounds. I don't think he's a typical double-figure scorer. Okpomo, and again, Okpomo. Excuse me for butchering those pronunciations. He had 5 points. I think you had mentioned off air that he had 6 points all season in this contest.
Somewhere in that vicinity.
Well, a low number. He typically isn't a guy that gets involved on the offensive end. Those guys had good nights both defensively and offensively compared to their norm. I think Bates and Thunderberg could have gotten a little bit more involved on the offensive end. You look at Thunderberg, he went 3 of 6 from the field. 2 of those misses were from 3. That shot just wasn't going in for him last night. Sometimes it can. I presume he makes them in practice as much as he likes to shoot them on a consistent basis, but wasn't really an outstanding offensive performance from him last night. He just gets 1 offensive rebound as well. Bates pretty quiet in 19 minutes. He struggled with foul trouble consistently throughout the game, but just 4 points for him coming off of a double-figure performance in Chapel Hill. He's been pretty efficient on the offensive end. I thought the bigs did struggle a little bit, more so than I maybe thought entering this contest with the Demon Deacons. But what do you make of where the half-court offense is right now? Because that really hasn't been the problem for NC State in these last few losses, and I thought it was okay last night. They got bailed out by making a few three-pointers at an efficient clip, but you'd like to see that 2-point field goal percentage go up a little bit more. I thought the ball movement was fine, but when you hear the criticism of this team, one of the main things that fans like to point to is I don't understand the half-court offense. I want to see play designs. I want to, that's not what NC State does. That's not what a lot of teams do in the country in 2021 in college basketball. They like to run off the pick and roll. They play more of a free-form style of offense. And I thought the ball movement has been getting better over these last few games. What would you make of that? Where do you think this half-court offense is right now? And it was refreshing to see that the half-court offense didn't have so much pressure last night because they were able to get those points in transition and off the turnovers.
Yeah, go back to the bigs real quick. Okpomo had only scored 6 points all year long. He had only made 2 baskets all year long, and he made 2 against NC State and had 5 points. So that's disappointing. Oguama is actually a pretty, that was kind of, he'd averaged 9 points per game. So that was kind of in line with what he typically does. I think the fan frustration maybe with the half-court offense is it is very individual based, right? As you talked about, and a lot of
generational too.
Yeah, I would give for that. There are a lot of us old timers can remember point guards going down the court and going, play 1, play 4, or tapping your head or doing something like that. I mean, they had design play sets and calls, and they would call plays every play, and you also had 45 seconds to run a play, which gives you a lot of time to set something up. I think it's fair to say that maybe NC State could be a little bit better in ball movement. They are 10th in the ACC in average assists per game. Out of 15 teams, they average under 13 assists per game.
Just 12 last night, about on par.
Yeah, and so, you look at the number of baskets made. Yeah, I think you would, about half of their shots were assisted on, a little more than half. So that's fairly decent. But, my concern is last night the half-court offense was really Devon Daniels. I mean, he did a lot in the half-court offense and was really efficient. and he drove to the basket and scored. I think they could be a little bit more aggressive shooting three-pointers myself. I think this team can be a good three-point shooting team. And maybe that'll be something that opens up against Syracuse when they play the 2-3 zone. If they, I like to say when they are scheduled to play Syracuse on Sunday. So assuming that game goes, that might be a good opportunity to be a little bit more aggressive with the three-point shot. Devon was very aggressive with his three-point shot, but and then we talked about the curiosity of Thomas Allen, who had two really nice games off the bench, and then gets back into the starting lineup in the last two games, has struggled with his shot. So that might be something to look for as well. But, I thought the half-court offense was okay. It was just a sloppy turnover, but Devon Daniels was able to bail them out. That's going to be the question, is if he's out for a considerable length of time, how do they make that up? I think the first key is don't turn the ball over. And there were just some sloppy little turnovers. I think Cam Hayes had a couple where he just kind of it almost looked like he lost the grip on the basketball trying to throw a pass once, or lost where he was on the court and stepped out of bounds once. So, eliminate those, and I think the half-court offense could flow a little bit more. But we'll see what kind of impact losing Devon will do.
Well, you're giving me a great opportunity to plug my upcoming column, which will be for premium subscribers. So great reason to use that promo code PACK60 for a free 60-day trial and all of our premium content, news, and analysis at thewolfpacker.com. But I'm going to write a column this afternoon, should be up either tonight or early tomorrow morning at the latest, talking about what NC State will do if they have to go a period of time without Devon Daniels. How are you going to distribute those minutes? Because Daniels he leads the team in minutes on the floor, so those minutes have to be distributed somewhere. So it will be interesting to see how that's broken down, and you can check out my column later on thewolfpacker.com. So use that promo code PACK60. But to your point about the perimeter shooting, I agree that if you're shooting 50% from the field, you might want to consider maybe taking more than just 14 threes, particularly if you're shooting at a higher clip than you are at 2. I mean, numbers-wise, it just makes – you don't – even if you're shooting at the same clip from 2-point field goals as you are 3-point field goals, you want to take more threes because they're worth more. But, you look down the box score, Braxton Beverly, he makes his only 3, but he only shoots 1 3 in 19 minutes. You probably want to see him maybe get a couple more looks than that. Thomas Allen, just 2 threes in 25 minutes. Both of them were really great looks, I thought. The shots just haven't been going down for him these past 2 games. He had 4 really great looks in the Carolina game. Wide open looks. You'd think at least 30% of them are going to go in the way he can shoot the basketball. But for some reason, that's something to monitor. He was really hot coming off the bench, to your point. In those 2 games prior to that, I think he went 8 of 10 in the Miami and Florida State games from the perimeter. But he's gone on a little bit of a cold streak, something to monitor there. He'll have an opportunity to maybe get back to his efficient ways from the perimeter against the zone defense that Syracuse will present on Sunday, or at least is scheduled to present, like you like to say, Matt. But yeah, just something I would look for there. But all in all, the Qualms with the half-court offense, you look at NC State's assist numbers in the ACC, I'd expect them to float around that 10 mark, particularly when you consider – this is the first year under Kevin Keatts that he doesn't have Markell Johnson on the floor, who in 2 of those first 3 seasons under Keatts led the ACC in assists per game. So, they've taken a more by committee approach to who's going to facilitate the offense. I think the ultimate goal is to get to Cam Hayes being kind of that main facilitator. And you saw some of that. He had a team-high 4 assists last night. Just 2 turnovers, which compared to his assist-to-turnover ratio in the month of January is an improvement. Not as great as you saw in those first 3 or 4 games back in the latter half of 2020, where I think he had his first 12 to 15 assists with just 1 turnover. And you can't expect that to be a sustainable rate for a freshman guard in the ACC. But as long as he can limit his turnovers and keep creating assists, that's his main priority right now. His offense, the shots will go in. It just wasn't his night last night. He went 0-4 from the field. He had 5 points, but all of them came at the foul line, and he went just 5 of 8 from the strike. But we know that Cam Hayes is a guy that's capable of making those pull-up jumpers. He is a capable perimeter shooter. So I think I wouldn't make much of that for now. I think those shots will eventually go in. But I think our last point before we get to game balls is that we should talk about the freshman guards, because this was the first time this season that both Shaquille Moore and Cam Hayes finished the game for NC State in a win. I mean, I think they were on the court in that Florida State game at the final buzzer, but again, that was garbage time. That was a lopsided victory for the Seminoles. This was a close contest. Cam Hayes went into the game with about 5 minutes to go. Shaquille Moore checked in with about 3.5 minutes to go in this game, and that's when it was a 6-point game. So the game was very much in reach for the Demon Deacons at that point, but Kevin Keats made a specific point. He talked about it in his post-game comments, that he wanted to put his freshman guards out there because he wanted to give them the experience of closing out a victory. And I thought they handled the situation pretty well. They both made a couple of free throws down the stretch. Shaquille Moore had a big jumper, I think, to push it back to a 3-possession lead with just over a minute to go. So I thought it was an encouraging sign, and Shaquille Moore had a solid game too. 9 points, 3 of 6 shooting, 2 of 3 from the perimeter, which was good to see him get back hot from beyond the arc. But Matt, just your thoughts on those 2 freshman guards last night.
I thought that they played really well on defense, which is where it starts. Look, they're going to have their ups and downs on offense. I told you before, I think I even said on the podcast before, these aren't top 25 freshmen that are going to come in and average 12, 14 points per game. And, you know me, we talked after those non-conference games. I was kind of the cautionary tale. I was like, I'm not going to get too excited about Campbell and Charleston Southern and North Florida and UMass Lowell. I got excited with how well they played against the St. Louis, and particularly UNC. I think they both played well against UNC, but and Shaquille Moore continued it against Boston College. But they've obviously have slowed down a little bit and hit a bit of a wall, and there are going to be more ups and downs to come. But defense can be one thing you can do consistently, and they were there defensively. I mean, Cam Hayes had a beautiful steal where he simply just jumped up and caught the pass that the guy was trying to throw over his head. Mm-hmm. And so that's where, for me, it got to be on a consistency basis. I thought that a couple of turnovers from Cam Hayes were avoidable. And right now, I just didn't quite seem comfortable with his shot. You saw him miss some free throws. I think he missed 2 in a row on his first trip to the line. Then he kind of settled in and made some free throws late. But I thought Shaquille Moore played within himself on offense. Let the offense come to him, as you told me earlier today. And I thought that was a nice way to kind of ease yourself back, get your confidence back. Made a great decision there at the end of the game with about 30 seconds to go when they beat the press. Thomas Allen was free. He didn't wait for the foul to come. He had a layup. Why worry about free throws if you have a layup? And Thomas Allen converted, and it was an easy way to beat the press. And so he made 2 big plays in the last minute plus to help finish out the game. So I thought that was a good move by Kevin Keats. That's like I said, I honestly didn't. If Wake had made 1 more 3 to cut it down to 3, then I would have started sweating a little bit. But I honestly didn't think NC State was ever in a tremendous I was just not that alarmed. I just didn't think that Wake Forest could finish off. They were on a 9-0 run. I didn't think it was going to extend to something like 17-2 or 15-0 to tie the game up. I just didn't see that happening. But that was a good experience for them.
And last night, in my eyes, that's exactly what you want out of Shaquille Moore if you look at his offensive box score. After his hot little 2-game stretch there at the end of December with, the 17 points in 15 minutes against Carolina, he was hot from 3. He had that highlight dunk. Then he shot well enough against Boston College, made the game winner down there in the final 30 seconds to give the Pack its final lead of that game to get its second ACC victory. I thought maybe that, gave Shaquille Moore some confidence, which is a good thing. You want your freshman to be confident, but maybe he had to come back to earth a little bit more because he's not going to be able to be that efficient night in, night out. And then you saw in early January that shooting percentage really start to slip. And he was taking a lot of shots too. I mean, even from the perimeter, you look down this NC State roster, he's certainly a guy that's capable of knocking down perimeter shots, but I wouldn't even put him in the top 3 of go-to guys that you want the ball in his hands to make a big, 3. I think it starts with Thomas Allen and Braxton Beverly. I think you could maybe make an argument for number 3, but good outing for Shaquille Moore. Surprising to see him, considering NC State had 10 steals, was surprised that he didn't come up with one. He leads NC State in steal rate, steals per game, and he also is among the top freshmen nationally in steal rate. I think he's among the top 5 in Power 5. But good outing for the freshman guards and something that should give them confidence moving ahead into ACC play. And credit to the Wolfpack for closing out the game in a game that they probably could have and should have won by double digits, but that Devon Daniels injury with 9 minutes to go, that's exactly when Wake Forest's big run started. And even though the players didn't admit after the game that the Daniels injury maybe distracted them briefly to allow the Demon Deacons to make that run, who knows? Wake Forest may have made that run either way, but I don't think you can downplay the effect of losing, star player, a veteran player on your team, a guy that's well liked in the locker room. When he goes down with a serious injury like that, I mean, you can't help but be somewhat distracted by that situation. So credit for NC State for finishing out the game, particularly with its freshman backcourt. And let's move on to game balls, Matt. I'll let you start. As always, I think we've got a couple good candidates, one obvious one. So give it to me.
I'm going to take the less obvious one. You can take the obvious one. I'm going to actually give it to a guy we hadn't talked about, but Jericho Hellums, I thought, played a pretty good game. 17 points, made 5 of 9 shots. I think he had a big bucket right out of that timeout. He was the one that made a basket, got a nice little, about 12-foot shot, maybe on the edge of the lane to put NC State back up by 8 and kind of, quite frankly, I had that as my play of the game because that ended the threat right there. An 8-point lead with 2.5 to 3 minutes left was going to be hard for Wake Forest to catch up. And he made a couple other key baskets. I think he had a 3-point play after Devon Daniels got hurt to keep the lead in double digits for a while. He became kind of the security blanket when Daniels went out. And so I'm going to give him my game ball for this game. You can take Devon Daniels.
Certainly deserving. Hellums would have been my number 2 pick, but I'll go with Devon Daniels. I'm glad you gave it to Hellums. Devon Daniels, 20 points, leads the team in scoring, 9 rebounds, had the most rebounds on the team, also 3 of them on the offensive glass, so that was important as well, despite the fact that NC State was out-rebounded by an undersized Wake Forest team. That's just a thorn in their side. They are not a good rebounding team. They just have to find ways to stay competitive on the glass. But he was efficient from the field too. 7 of 10 from the field, 3 of 4 from the perimeter. Those 3-point shots have been going in for him in these past couple games. Went back to the Carolina game in Chapel Hill. So hopefully quick recovery for Devon. We hope he's okay. We should find more about that hopefully by the end of this week. So we'll see. I would doubt he would be quickly available as soon as this weekend, but we will see. We don't know. We don't want to speculate. And a big game coming up for NC State on Sunday in the Carrier Dome at Syracuse. A team that's a beatable team, a team that Kevin Keats has had a lot of success against in his prior 3 years at NC State. He's 3-0 against the Orange. He likes playing that zone. NC State finds a way to get it done in the zone. They've got those pick and pop forwards like a Jericho Hellums, like a DJ Thunderberg, to your point that you mentioned off air earlier, to kind of just infiltrate that zone and create shots, knock down some mid-range shots. So one of 3 remaining Quad 1 opportunities for the Wolfpack on the current schedule. Now, they've got a couple that were postponed that could be rescheduled, so we'll hang tight there. Maybe NC State gets a couple more Quad 1 opportunities, but right now, NC State is 0 in Quad 1 games in terms of NCAA resume for the tournament. So, big opportunity on Sunday. We'll see if the Pack can string together another win, get back to 500 in ACC play. So before we close out this podcast, please remember to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen to us. We're on Apple Podcast app, Spotify, Google Play. If you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and give us a thumbs up on this video so that other Wolfpack fans will see this on their timeline and start watching us. We know that you like our content, so be courteous to your fellow Wolfpack fans. And follow us on Twitter. You can follow us on Twitter at The Wolfpacker. You can follow me personally at Justin H. Will. Give us a like on Facebook, NC State Wolfpack on thewolfpacker.com. And, of course, use that promo code PACK60 for a free 60-day trial on thewolfpacker.com. For Matt Carter, this is Justin Williams, and this has been the Wolfpacker Podcast.